Hello, and thank you for joining me for part 2 of Exploring the Bible. I'm going to share the screen with you now. This is the question which we finished up on part 1 asking. How can we prove that God exists and that the Bible really is His Word? It's a really sensible question, and yet the answer is not complicated nor difficult to understand, because the Creator Himself anticipated this question and actually answers it in this book. He wants us to search His Word by way of proving for ourselves that He does exist, using the evidence which He has supplied. And He's given the answer to this question in many places in this book. One of these places is in a book of prophecy called the book of Isaiah. Here are the words we read in Isaiah 46. Remember the former things, those of long ago. I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come. I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. And you have the reference here, Isaiah 46. So the author of this book, the Bible, makes some amazing claims here in these verses. He claims that not only is He the God of creation, but also He is the only God. There is no other. And not only that, He tells us that He can see the future. He can make known to us what is going to happen, and that He has a purpose with the earth and with mankind, and that this purpose will stand. So the author of this book set it out in such a way where we can read and consider logically the evidence which is presented to us. And the evidence is there that He can indeed see the future. And we're going to look at some of that very quickly now. Some facts to consider. The Old Testament of the Bible was definitely completed over 200 years before the birth of Jesus Christ. This is proven by the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, because that has been recorded as finishing 200 years before the birth of Christ. The Dead Sea Scrolls also support the dating of the Old Testament, and these were found in a place called Qumran from 1947 to 1957. The fact that Jesus Christ existed, that He preached the gospel and was killed, is supported outside of the Bible record altogether by historians who recorded it at the time, such as Josephus and others. And these facts can be substantiated in any reliable public library or even online now on the computer. These are facts which are outside of the Bible. And from these and many other provable facts, we can now test whether God can actually foretell the future, realizing that the predictions which are made in the Old Testament, which remember was written, completed 200 years before Jesus, were made hundreds and sometimes even thousands of years before they were fulfilled in the New Testament, after Jesus. Let's look at one such prophecy now. This is a prophecy of the crucifixion of Christ. And when we consider the minute detail which is set out in this prophecy in Psalm 22 regarding the crucifixion of Christ, and then the way in which each of these details was fulfilled, we'll understand that God can predict the future. We have to remember that again, this has been proven by the Dead Sea Scrolls and others, that this psalm was written by David 1,000 years before it was fulfilled. So when we look to this psalm, Psalm 22, and we look at verse 1, we look at the words that Christ would speak on the cross. Again, remembering that it's 1,000 years before Jesus was born. And then when we turn to Matthew in the New Testament, Matthew 27, and see that these are exactly the words that Jesus spoke. Verses 7 and 8 of Psalm 22 record the actions and words of the Jews at the foot of the cross. 1,000 years later, we have the words given to us in Matthew 27, verses 39 to 43. In verse 16 of Psalm 22 is outlined for us the actual type of death by crucifixion that Jesus would have to endure. When we get to the New Testament, Matthew 27, and John 19, we have it outlined for us the way in which this is fulfilled. And a minute detail of the way in which the clothes of Jesus would be parted is recorded for us in verse 18 of Psalm 22. And 1,000 years later, fulfilled by men who had no idea that they were fulfilling a 1,000-year-old prophecy. And that's recorded for us in John 19 and in Matthew 27. It would be absolutely impossible for any man to predict these events in such detail. If we accept that these words, which again can be proven from a historical and scientific point of view, were actually written 1,000 years before they were fulfilled, then we have to accept that there is a power and an intelligence which is far beyond anything human. This then is the beginning of the evidence in this book, which proves that an almighty creator, referred to in the book as God, does exist, and that this book really is his message to us, outlining many things which are yet to be fulfilled, which we will be examining in the next podcast. This Psalm 22 not only predicted the crucifixion of Christ, but also predicted his resurrection and what he will do in the future. And this also we will be looking at in our next podcast. If you are looking for truth and what this whole world and the purpose of this world is all about, then I would urge you to turn up these verses for yourself and compare these remarkable predictions as they were just a tiny example of the evidence we are given in Scripture.